Welcome to another episode of the Faces of Newquay podcast. Today we're speaking to a good friend of mine, Dicky Souray, about his local poetry night, Sprout Spoken. We cover a lot about spoken word, but we also talk about, in general, the role of performing arts in bringing the community together. I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to hearing your comments and your thoughts about the talk. Well, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it a lot. And kind of what I wanted to do with this podcast was have conversations with people from the community because I've only just moved here. So it was really to speak with people that I'd met and had been a part of me settling in over the last 4 or 5 months. And that's why Sprout Spoken's kind of especially important to me, because it was the first event that I went to, and now I'm good friends with you and Baston Clare and some of the other guys that I met at that Sprout Spoken event. So yeah, especially kind of looking forward to doing this chat.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, do you want to just maybe fill us in on kind of what Sprout Spoken is and give us the kind of elevator pitch for it?
Well, I suppose Sprout Spoken started fundamentally as something that was about me bringing together some of the things that I was interested in, and that colliding with a desire to feed into the community and to fill a gap that was there. And then that was a perfect storm with Baston Clare and their provision at Sprout. So what's emerged originally was an open mic style poetry evening, or spoken word evening as it kind of became to be known, and then it's grown from there. Now a regular event, monthly event, that alternates kind of bi-monthly from an open mic style to more of a performance kind of showcase evening. And from that kind of baseline of what Sprout Spoken is, other things are shooting off in terms of workshops and groups and festival involvement and that kind of thing. So that's what it is, really in summary, I suppose.
Yeah, I kind of like what you said about how you want it to kind of support the community. In what way do you think it fits in with the Newquay?
Well, I think, like you, I'm a Londoner, or certainly kind of have spent a long time in London and still feel like a Londoner in many respects. So that brings a lot of challenges, by coming from a place like London where you have everything on your doorstep and a rich variety of arts in every form you can imagine. So coming to a place like Newquay that is so completely different, you can look around and think, oh well, there's not what I want here. The things that I want are not here. So instead of wishing it to happen and someone else to do it, there is that freedom and that desire that I found to just make it happen. And the word community has so many overtones, and some people see it as a negative thing, doing things for the community in some kind of patron way, where you're almost providing something that is needed, almost morally or in some kind of way like that. But actually, Newquay's a perfect place where you can kind of do something like that, and actually people respond really well. And
yeah, I definitely think when I kind of decided to make the move down to Newquay, one of the things I was worried about was, is there going to be enough for me to do? I lived near enough central London, and there's a gig every evening if you want, or a show, or lots of things on. So But actually, now that I'm here, I think it's a nice. I'd rather go to one Sprout spoken than kind of 10 quite impersonal gigs in London.
Yeah.
They're smaller and you probably don't get the same calibre of performers, but you have the same kind of group of people that come every time, so you meet people
and that's the community bit.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just simply providing an opportunity for people to connect. I guess that's what it means to put something on for the community. It's, we all desire connection fundamentally, and in an increasingly fragmented society where we live individualistic lives, and a lot of us live, the vast proportion of the population in the UK, as in other Western countries, live in cities, conurbations, which makes community connection harder. So providing an opportunity for connection, I think that's the essence of what it means to be community.
That's exactly what I meant. That you've just much more eloquently. That's the way you do the poetry, I guess. But yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I just prefer it. Everything about that here. I find it's much easier to connect with people. People are less busy.
Yeah.
Which I think makes a big difference. And the events are smaller and more interpersonal, so you kind of form better connections with people.
And like you say, you know that you'll see the same people at the next event, or more likely on the street or in the cafe, in between. Where in London, obviously, everyone is a stranger in many respects.
Yeah.
Well,
it's just so big.
Well, people talk about London with a broad brushstroke and describe it as one place, and obviously, it's an extraordinarily rich and diverse place where communities do exist. And I have friends in London who are really passionate about their communities and have done things in the same way that Sprout Spoken is. They've set up something. It feeds into their particular passion, but it provides connection and opportunity.
And I think they're a lot of the areas that are being kind of gentrified, so-called.
It's a difficult word, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean they are, but I don't know. It seems interesting to me because it's a lot of the places that are being gentrified. You're getting a lot more independent businesses, kind of run by local people instead of your big chain shops or your big chain cafes and so on. Which I think is a big part of keeping the pound within that community, rather than spending £10 in a shop in a Tesco and it shoots off to the headquarters of Tesco to be lost forever. Your £10 goes to Sprout Spoken or like a local independent shop owner who's then going to do their shopping in another independent shop, and that kind of money stays within the community.
I think that's one of the benefits. I'm not sure whether that is I think that is one of the reasons why we shop local. But I think, funnily enough, just as I'm thinking about it, the connection is almost the more conscious driver. We are aware when we're putting money in the hands of a local business that it's going to be supporting them. But I think it is partly. I think the overriding thing is that connection. We want to go into the same place, feel comfortable, feel like we're connected with the person behind the counter, and that's where the lives intersect. I go to Poundland and I make a point of talking to all the staff. I used to live literally backed onto it, would go there regularly for all my bits and pieces. I would make connection and learn names and talk. But because there wasn't a level of pride for them, that affected their very demeanour and presentation, so the connection was limited. Doesn't mean you can't go to the same Tesco every day and make connections, but I think when you go to somewhere where the business owner particularly is standing behind the counter, they appreciate you, you appreciate them appreciating you, and that's where that connection fills your love tank up. And you kind of are happy to part with the money. Because it's interesting, I think, we like to talk about, and again, this is no disrespect, this is with kind of one finger at you, two fingers back at me. We like to talk about kind of spending local, but maybe it's just me, but I will, when it comes to a lot of choices I make, I make it on an economy, kind of personal economy basis, and we'll go and buy something cheaply rather than, from a multinational or corporate or than locally. But it's changing habits, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, and there's a balance definitely. It probably is more expensive to shop locally, but it's definitely better for kind of building up the community. And I think if you run your own events and so on, then it will come back around because the people you shop at are more likely to come to your events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have more disposable income and so on. And yeah, some things you can only get from like a big shop or a Sainsbury's or something.
Yeah.
But a balance, I reckon.
Can we go back to that gentrification? I'm interviewing you. Can we go back? I'd like to thrash this out with you because it's something I haven't come to a conclusion on. The word gentrification is the one I use as well when I'm trying to describe what's happening to places like Newquay or pockets of places in London, like particularly the East End, that I'm familiar with and you've lived in before. Maybe we need to thrash out a new word. What is the best word to describe it? Because would you agree with me? Gentrification has that slight, again, patronising overtone in terms of a very distinction of class and where we where we might sit and where we look at the wider community and where we would like them to sit. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's you have like you have these pockets of real community where you have a lot of kind of artists that flourish, a lot of really nice independent cafes and restaurants that like we just talked about add that connection to each other. And I think people see that and they want a piece of that and they want to feel they want to be around creative people and have those connections in independent shops and stuff like that, so kind of more and more people flood to this area and are attracted to this area.
Do you think it's a class thing?
Well, I think, ultimately it is, because the idea is that when people flood to this area, more demand means prices rise, which means the only the people that end up buying houses there are the ones with the most money.
I was thinking more in terms of, is there... we're returning, obviously, we are now returning to an artisan community, independent. There was a drive to return to that, and of course it's a return. So originally, if we're talking about something that happened in between, which involves kind of capitalism, turbo capitalism, mass market. So we're returning to something which I think historically wasn't a class thing. It was, everyone lived in a community, everyone shopped in the same shop, people had different incomes, people were, I use the word class very, very loosely because it's such a slippery term now. But it's just interesting that we're returning to that, and it's a very middle class desire to go back to craft and to handmade, and but I think we're in an interesting phase where certain people, certain socioeconomic demographic will not be particularly fussed about where they shop, and I think historically it was just everything for all in the same community, in the same town, and a man who ran a hardware shop might not be artistic. His business and his interest might not be artistic. He might just sell things that he sourced in his one-man shop locally, and that was just as much part of it. So it's not necessarily the craft thing, and see what I mean? It's kind of, it's just tussling this out, really.
No, I just think you have this, I don't know how to explain it, but I think people went through a phase where, like you said earlier, price was one of the most important factors. So we all went cheap, and the way to get cheap things is to mass produce them.
Out of country.
Yeah, with cheap labour from abroad. And then we kind of realised that, the food was making us unhealthy, the clothes were falling apart, or we were just having to buy more stuff, and we were ending up not very happy. And
in fact, the desire to buy stuff was placed in us.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, through advertising
and through availability and price.
Yeah. So, and I think people started to realise that maybe that's not what's going to make them happy, and what's going to, I say, wearing H&M jeans,
Primark t-shirt.
Yeah. Mine are second hand at least.
Oh.
Yeah, I win that one. These are
my Nikes are second hand.
Are they? Nice. I was in. So I got these jeans second hand, and the zipper was broken.
Did you know when you bought it?
No. So I kind of paid a local seamstress.
Oh, it's come full circle.
To fix my zipper, but she put in like a really loose, like dodgy zipper. So now, just every now and then, it just like slowly unzips as I'm like walking about. And I was in St Ives doing a life drawing class with my dad because he was down to visit and he loves that stuff. And
I see where this is going.
I know I'd done like 20 minutes drawing this lady, and I looked down and there was just this like kind of I felt like the weirdest.
How much did you pay for your zipper to be done?
I think it was like £8.
Yeah. See, again, that's going back to that craft. Like, you know, it's
but that was more than I paid for the jeans.
Exactly. There's so many things that I can't do with my hands that I wish I could, and I'm paying more than I earn on an hourly rate for the most basic of things to be done. Okay, part of that's laziness, part of that is skill, inability, part of that is time, and it's a choice. But I wish I had those. You know, I just bought a house, plastering, plumbing, electrics. You know.
I'm on the fence with that stuff.
I think you're a bit more proficient than me.
No, I'm absolutely not. Aga definitely is way more proficient than me at everything. But I don't know. I nowadays I think there's a lot of people out there that do have the skills.
Yeah.
And that can do these things way better than I can. You know, I have my skill set and
stick to what you know.
Yeah. Like, I can teach a kid tennis, but I'm not going to try and replumb my bath or something like that.
So here's an interesting thing when it comes to community and skill sets. I was talking to my daughter, explaining. She's nearly 9. I was explaining what money is, and until recently, I didn't pursue economics. I haven't had any economic study or training. So what I've learned really is just through life. And I was explaining to her what money is, and the 50 Things That Made the Modern Economy on Radio Works the World Service was such a great series, and about to start a new one. Whether you know, I don't know whether you come across it or not, but it's essentially 8 or 9 minute snapshots of particular things that were really significant have really been significant in the developing of the modern economy, ranging from the birth pill to the elevator to the pencil, and they were really kind of succinct. And Tim Harford, the writer and presenter of the series, is really engaging, and they're full of anecdotes and stories and the people behind it. And I played them to my kids in the car as we're doing the many miles that we do, just letting it kind of drip in. Anyway, I didn't know what money was really. I couldn't really explain what money was until I heard one of the episodes about money, cash, and what money was and its roots. And I was explaining it to my daughter, and essentially we got onto kind of the idea of bartering, and so I explained kind of the history of money, whereby you'd offer me your skills of plastering, I would offer my skills of plumbing to you, and if I couldn't provide you with the plumbing for whatever reason, and you wanted the plastering done, I would give you a piece of paper that said I owe you plumbing, and then you take my owe you plumbing piece of paper, and let's say I went on holiday, and meanwhile a third person, Aga, said, can you do me some computer design? I need some plumbing, and you'd be like, well, I'd give you this,
Yeah.
and so it became an IOU. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I wanted to come to was the idea of bartering in the community where, if we're trying to reduce the influence of a wider turbo capitalist economy, bartering I think is a really interesting idea, and there is various bartering currencies, but that could be something that's really interesting to drive, where you do a skill swap, and again it would create connection. You use like a website where you're just saying, I need this, I need
think
this,
there
I
are
need this. Yeah.
websites like that.
And I see it in Newquay though, like I haven't seen
yeah.
that transaction exist in Newquay, for example.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, there's definitely that kind of stuff in London, but there's just sheer volume of people. And you have, I think you have like a lot of people teaching certain skills, like languages. You get a lot of language teachers on there. Yeah, and I mean, people with the kind of skills that most people need every day, like plumbing or electrician, or they tend to be busy enough as it is with like high paying.
Yeah, true. But I guess they still have to pay out for things. You know what I mean? Or they still have to do things themselves, which they'd rather do. You know, you want a CV done. You know, I can. My skills. All my skills are written work, proofreading. I can write you a poem. You know, if you someone has asked me to write a poem once for them for their sweetheart, so it's like, I don't know what else I can offer really. My skills aren't particularly useful in Newquay, but
how many poems do you swap for replumbing your bath?
It's all about the value you place on it.
That's what I mean. Whereas I'm fine with money. I think it's quite a nice way of.
No, it's fine. I was just thinking about the opportunity for connection with the community.
Yeah. I think I would rather see people just making a bit more of a conscious decision about where they shop and
it's not either or, it's both and really.
Yeah, but I think to have something like Sprout up the road compared to like Nero or Costa up the road.
Yeah, no.
Why would you? No, I just can't imagine why you would go to Nero.
I think coffee is one of the things that the middle class is particularly, like, you're going to use that term really liberally. Coffee is the thing that everyone would choose to spend locally rather than, because it's they notice that they're spending lots of money on coffee they don't even like, so they might as well spend almost the equivalent, if not slightly less, for a coffee that's made by someone they know, that's been made in front of you with care. And that's. Can I just go back to one thing about our mutual experience of London? And we talked about being here, being in Newquay. It is easier to have a sense of community than sometimes perhaps living in certain places in London. And the fact that you said you could go to a gig in London and it might be bigger, whatever that means, of course, in terms of that audience or venue or production values, but the quality of the acts would be greater. I think that's one of the things that moving to a place like Newquay, particularly with that focus on quality, has been quite a journey for me, because my background, I'm not technically trained, my background is the performing arts and English literature, and particularly with performing arts, I've seen a lot of theatre, spent a long time in London, I've travelled internationally actually to see theatre. It's really my thing, and I know good theatre when I see it. Of course, it's all a question of taste, but so moving to Newquay and seeing theatre that I didn't find good enough, it's been a journey for me over the last 13-14 years when I've been here, where now almost just as important as the artistic merit of whatever art form I'm engaging with, such as theatre, is the connection that is taking place as I look around the room, whether it's the person serving the coffee in the village hall that has kind of made that piece of theatre happen, or like in the case of Sprout Spoken, it's the connection between people in the audience, and the connection between the person who's got up for the first time, has never written anything before, has rolled a dice, and gone for it, and that I call it gold, I suppose. If the goal is just as much that as the next person who gets up is more experienced, is proficient.
Yeah.
If you're a wham bam poet that really, you know.
I think that's probably what I noticed at Sprout Spoken events, and I think I enjoyed more the open mic than the one with the performers, because you do have. I mean, I really like them both. Don't get me wrong, but I really liked the support people were giving when they know that it's someone local who has never done this before, or, you know, like I went up and did a poem, and, you know, probably everyone can see that, you know, I'm shitting myself.
And it was very good.
But like, you get a sense for how someone feels,
yeah,
and,
totally.
you know, that they're doing something that's out of their comfort zone. So then suddenly everyone's like,
yeah, but
you know,
you're you know,
yeah, they rally behind
totally
whoever's up there.
And that's some part of the. I mean, I stumbled across that, I'm going to be honest. And that's why the journey's been slow, the time that I've lived here. And, you know, often people have thought I've talked about theatre, they obviously think I'm a bit aloof with, obviously. I've spoken to people and they feel like I'm aloof or a bit snobbish or whatever when it comes to various art forms. But actually, I've been wrestling because I love quality and I love my theatre and I love being moved by really good theatre. It's probably a little bit of me that's an underachiever and frustrated over the years, therefore there's probably a sense of jealousy and, you know, personal stuff to work through. But when it came to doing Sprout Spoken, I rolled the dice by starting the event. But in my mind, I was thinking, let's get really, you know, I hoped and wished for really good quality theatre, poetry and spoken word, and it was all about people leaving feeling impressed. And I stumbled across it, that vibe, and it's changed me. It's totally changed my understanding of how I feel about the arts, and in particular spoken word, and what's happening at Sprout, and how I feel about Newquay, and where I want Sprout Spoken to go. And it's really interesting that you say you enjoy the open mics more than the showcase, and I totally get that.
Well, now. I think the one thing I would say is that the first ever poetry event I went to was a poetry slam in New York, like 9 years ago, and I'd never heard of spoken word or done anything like that, and some people in the hostel that I was staying at were going to this event, so I went along, and it was like in the middle of Brooklyn, in some like dodgy underground like bar club thing with a little stage, and the place was completely packed, and every time someone said something that connected, like the audience was in uproar or was clapping.
Were they clicking? Clicking's a big thing.
Not really. Not really. Like a little bit. Yeah.
But it was like charged.
And it wasn't. Yeah, it was like charged is definitely the right word. There was a reaction to everything, you know, and I felt a lot more connected to the audience because, you know, I felt like I could relate to what was being said. And then I heard everyone else going,
yeah,
and I'd be like,
oh, I'm also, I'm connecting, but I'm connecting with you because you also are connecting, you know. That kind
whereas I feel like people aren't quite sure how to react.
It's exactly
at the Sprout Spoken. Yeah, there's still quite a bit of, are we watching? Are we engaged? Are we a part of this?
Do you remember the event we went to in Falmouth together? We went to a poetry slam. And the guy who they brought in, who was late, a seasoned pro who was going to host the evening, he stopped at one point and said, "Guys, do you want to know how like a poetry slam works? Like you as an audience." I mean, he was from Manchester, so you know he was obviously came from an experienced kind of urban slam like environment. But he almost like said, "Guys, you need to react more. Like there needs to be more of this connection. Feel free to kind of respond. You know, show us how you're feeling about the pieces that are being shared."
I mean, this is definitely, it's probably not true, but it feels like an English thing to sit and just you know just watch rather than be a bit more vocal and be a bit more raucous crowds we want to see.
Yeah, but I think we touched just now a little bit on why I'm so excited about spoken word, because as an art form, which is new for me, and again, like, what is spoken word? We use that label kind of illiberally, but I think we know what we're both referring to. I'm excited by it because it's performance and yet not performance. It's pure and it's simple. It's short and sweet, even with a poet set. The piece will last a certain amount of time. If you're not connecting, there's another one on the way. Most spoken word events, will involve multiple people up at the front. So you've always got something fresh. It's just literally a man or woman with a mic, and it's as wide as it's broad in terms of the variety of styles, subject matter, and to top it off, to return to this idea of connection, if you compare it to something like, theatre on the one side, you're aware of it being a performance. There's an artifice in any piece of theatre, is artifice because it's constructed, and often involves light, stage, scenery. Often involves more than one performer. That's one thing. Perhaps the other thing that perhaps you could compare spoken word to is stand-up comedy. Lots of people in one room, an individual with a mic, an audience reaction, laughter particularly, but it's predominantly there to entertain. Will touch nerves, and some of my favourite comedians are able to touch a nerve as well. But ultimately, again, you're aware there's artifice. With a spoken word, some artists have a persona, but it's got to be something of the authentic that's being channeled through in that kind of pure, simple form. And that's what generates that connection, which you were describing, between one another. So the artist and the individual watching, but also the audience. I mean, it's shared experience, that's the term. And you get shared experience in the theatre, you get shared experience in a stand-up comedy gig. But something about spoken word, just touch is something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because you're playing yourself. You're not on stage performing Shakespeare's character.
Yeah, it's your words.
It's your words, and you put, at some point in your life, you have to have sat down and
crafted it.
Yeah.
And like you say, there is a persona, but there is something of the authentic, the personal and authentic being channeled through that. And that's why, if you go back to the open mics, where you have people getting up who are very much not performing, the word I like to use is sharing, particularly with the open mics, as I encourage people to come up and share, because it means that people who aren't necessarily extroverts or natural performers, if I say come up and perform, instantly puts an expectation of their execution and the audience's response. If I say share, it's about you taking what you've crafted personally. You may have it on a page or a phone, you may have it in your memory, and you're there to simply share it. Share it as best you can. Use gesture, tone, volume, so that your audience can experience it, but share it. Don't worry about performing it. But of course, there is also a place for getting up and performing.
Yeah.
But you're still channeling something authentic. You're sharing it through a persona, so it becomes a performance.
Yeah, and anyone that's kind of tried to write something like poetry, it kind of has to come from a personal place. It has to come from inside, doesn't it?
Yeah, like any art form. But I guess, again, like that's the spoken word, the poet standing up. There's nothing else. There's nowhere to hide. It's you and a mic. Sometimes not even a mic. So yeah.
I did. Remember the first poem I wrote came from this exactly what we've been talking about. This form of I wanted to, I don't know, express some quirky things about me. And I guess, I was probably 18, 19, express some quirky things about me and have people in the audience or wherever, I only performed it once,
Have I seen it yet?
No, and I think it's been locked away.
I think we should unlock it.
It was, yes, I mean, basically I went and after I saw that gig in New York, I came back and got really into just watching some great people performing on YouTube and stuff like that. So I thought I'd have a crack at writing something myself. And I went out one evening and basically got a bit pissed and tried to cycle home drunk. And I was going down this like country path near where I live, and I was seeing how long I could cycle with my eyes shut. And so I'd do like, I'd close it and I'd do like 2 seconds and then open it, and then I'd do 3 seconds and open it.
This isn't going to end well.
And then I was in a ditch, like face first in a ditch, and I was fine, and I got up and I was laughing to myself, and I kind of thought, I wonder how many other people have tried that or like done some, when you're on your own and you're looking in the mirror and you're doing some weird thing, and then so then I wrote this poem, and it was all about things like, have you ever
the weird stuff that we do
done this? Yeah, or like it was called like, am I the only one, basically, and it's all about am I the only one that's tried to cycle with their eyes closed or something crazy. Which I think totally relates to what we were talking about with this form of
connection, the desire to be known, the desire to know that you're not alone, the desire to share the moments that you think no one else sees, no one else does see. To share those and hope they'll be at the very least amusing and pleasant for someone listening, and perhaps more than that, stimulating, inspiring, thought-provoking.
Where do you see Sprouts Spoken going next? Because at the moment you've got the open mic nights once a month, and then the paid performers night once a month. Once every other month.
Yeah, so they alternate, so it's bi-monthly.
Yeah.
I can't really talk about Sprouts Spoken without talking about myself, which is a really... I like talking about myself. I think everyone does to some degree. I'm probably slightly above average, but that's who I am. And I can't really talk about Sprouts Spoken and where it's going without talking about how I'm feeling and about it and where it's come from. Because as I say, I've stumbled across what makes the first part, the open mic style. And I'm still stumbling. My personal journey at the moment is about trying to get to grips with my capacity. It's kind of the word of the year, certainly the word of last year and the word of this year. Personal capacity. We talked about this before. Being realistic, letting go of things, trusting people, letting them run with stuff. Asking for help, believing people want to help and be involved. Because all these things are really kind of that I'm working them through, and that has a direct impact on Sprouts Spoken because I was the one that started it up. I pretty much run the whole thing myself until relatively recently. Everything from kind of like designing the logo to printing the leaflets to taking them out, to booking performers, to running the actual night, hosting, putting the lights up. I mean, literally everything other than the Sprout guys hosting. You're going to say something, sorry.
Well, no, only just that, I've heard some of your ideas for what's coming next, and they, some of them sound really exciting. We were talking about the Sprouts Spoken for Kids before the podcast started.
I can run off a list of things that I certainly would like to do. It's a question, I was trying to answer the question like honestly in terms of what is the likely, and what's the progression and the order, and because the moment I say it, we're doing this, and this, it's part of me putting something on myself that maybe is unrealistic or is running before we can walk, and I can run off some ideas anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean the Sprout Spoken for Kids is happening.
The Sprout Spoken for Teens is happening, which again is a working title, Sprout Spoken. I mean, it's basically a teen takeover, but I've let go of that entirely. A couple of people, 2 people who are really keen to run it. I don't feel it's my skill set. I work better with young kids actually than teens. I've got one on my hands now. And that's one is enough, although he's lovely. So they're running with it. I think what will emerge from that is the climax of it will be essentially a takeover of an open mic run by young people, let's call them young people, for young people, with the support of a few guys who are kind of facilitating it. There may be some workshops and some things like that. We'll key in probably with the writer's block over kind of further west, who've already got some of that going, encouraging young people to write. Or where we come in is the emphasis on performance or sharing, so the actual not just writing, but getting up and sharing it, and then also a stage, an opportunity showcase. So that's definitely happening.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
I think there's nothing better than like being encouraged to sit down and think about what's going on in your life and putting stuff down on paper, especially at every age. I mean, but for these guys, what's the age group there?
I mean, again, I said teen simply because it demarks it from a kids' Sprout Spoken that we would like to do. There'll be some overlap, so it'll probably be a kind of a 12, 13 to 16.
Yeah, and thinking back to my experience as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, like I was getting no real information about what other teens were thinking. There was nowhere where I was going, and I was hearing...
Pre-YouTube generation, you see.
Yeah, I wonder if it's different now. But I definitely wasn't hearing... my friends were probably too embarrassed to talk about a lot of stuff. I was a shy teenager, so I was definitely too embarrassed to talk about stuff. But if I'd have had an outlet where there are other people getting on stage and like we've been talking about, giving pieces of themselves out, and I think I would have liked to have heard what other teenagers were thinking and going through, and were they experiencing the same things that
totally.
Got to be good for mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, we're next week's the start of Mental Health Week for children.
Didn't know that. So tight. Well, the team who are running with it, maybe they're ahead of the game with that.
And there's a lot of like new government funding out there for mental health, and I imagine especially for teenagers. Because these things are really good for the community and for the kids, but are probably quite hard to fund and keep.
But, do you mean for hard to fund as in personally? Or there's money out there, then there's probably, as in particularly for arts, social arts are easy to fund than pure arts for art's sake, as it were.
I mean, they're hard to run as a functioning business without support.
Yeah, totally. It's
you need the funding from the government or from a charity.
Yeah, because there's no income really.
Yeah.
I think the idea of, as you were talking about your experience as a young person, now outlets and things like that, I never had a problem expressing myself. I've always been quite extrovert, but it's in terms of just thinking about the art form we're talking about, poetry, spoken word. We were encouraged to write poetry at school, as every kid is still required to to kind of write poetry. But the idea of writing for sharing, it was a different thing, and that's not what we were never encouraged to do. That wasn't a thing. Poetry was page poetry rather than stage poetry. And I wonder whether that would have been the next step to achieve some of what you're saying would be good for young people. And that's, I'm really intrigued by the word poetry because, and it's interesting that spoken word, whilst they blend, the phrase exists and therefore it must denote something different. And my background is literature and performance, so this is where it crosses over. I believe I'm really interested in the written word and word on the page, but I'm also very interested, probably more interested in the word on the stage. So, but if you say poetry to young people, it's breaking down that idea that poetry is an academic, disciplined, dry, boring, associated with the demands of the literature syllabus at school, but actually saying no, poetry it actually demands to be shared. Poetry with yourself, as catharsis, for therapy, for enjoyment, pleasure, fine, that is a thing. But why not share it?
Yeah, but I guess if you think about what you get taught at school, I think personally, I was definitely pushed things that to read poems and that I was just not able to relate to.
No.
Probably too young.
Yeah.
I think teachers might read quite famous historical poems and kind of understand them for what they are and have a lot more to relate to them being, probably late 20s, early 30s. But when you're early teens or even late teens, you just look at them and you have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, although I guess the best teachers are able to help young minds to recognise that they're not there yet, but to get them to be interested. Because one of the ways, I talk to my children about being an adult and the things that an adult has to do that a child doesn't have to do in order to prepare them and to get them thinking, and they try and error. My daughter has a filing cabinet only because she is a collector of things like me and designs 1,000,001 pictures a day and collects theatre tickets and things, and they're all over her room. I'm like, that's fine, they can be everywhere, but would you like to have them in an ordered way so that you can easily access them? So it's that kind of modelling of adulting, and that's, I guess, the best teachers are able to to say, okay, you've never been to a world war in a trench, aged 18, you're already 13, you're studying war poetry, but let's have a think about, let's get you there. But I think the English literature syllabus has got a lot to answer for. You look at, our language is the dominant language in the world, is behind some of the greatest works of literature, and yet people come out of school, particularly with Shakespeare, it's Shakespeare and poetry are like the two kind of words that cause such strong feelings. I think for me, having spent some time in teacher training, for kids to come out of school and they have allergic reactions to both, and partly the reason I would argue is because they're fundamentally taught in a way that's orientated towards the page rather than stage. Shakespeare never published his own works in his lifetime. He wasn't interested in works of written art. Poetry has always been an oral tradition, and there's only been a written tradition more latterly, with mass literacy and things. So actually getting back this, let's think about Shakespeare and studying Shakespeare in performance. Let's think about poetry and enjoying it and writing it and sharing it live.
I think they're just disenfranchised with the content. Even if you took... I do know a couple of people, like there's a rapper called Akala who does a lot of spoken word as well. And he's working on a project at the moment where he's taking Shakespeare's works and rewriting them and transforming them into like an on-stage theatre show that he's touring around schools and places like that. But that's rare, and I don't think that's what teachers are teaching on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure there are a lot of teachers I don't want to
the best stuff
across like I don't appreciate what's happening. Just from my experience,
I think
I would have liked to have read kind of like I was saying, poems that I could relate to at the time. Because they're the ones that would have hooked me in,
and then potentially,
and then I would have expanded on that and started finding other poets and other people that I could talk to about this. Because, as much as I want to enjoy the classics, especially at that age, I don't understand them enough.
No, and I think
to relate to them.
That's a syllabus thing, and the English literature syllabus, the English language syllabus, both of them they're really interesting animals. They seem to have been formed, by years of convention, sometimes sentiment, traditional understandings of education, and it's as if they need a complete overhaul, and we don't seem to do revolutions in this country, we just do evolution. We're just too English. So it is changing, it has changed, but for instance, the syllabus, why are certain texts on the syllabus? And if we are going to keep certain texts on the syllabus, for example, Shakespeare is essentially a legal requirement because it's on every English syllabus by virtue of going to school, having to go to school, you have to study it. Then if we're going to place it there, why are we? And if we are going to do it, let's get teachers in or train teachers to be able to teach it, or at least provide out of school experiences so that kids can both can enjoy and engage. One of the projects that's excited me for a long time and never developed is the fact that if Shakespeare is essentially it's compulsory, if you live in London and you're studying Romeo and Juliet, the chances are during that 2 years of A-level or GCSE, 1, 5, 10 productions of Romeo and Juliet could take place within a square 10 miles. So you have wonderful opportunities to go and see it in performance. Once you've seen it in performance, it feeds back into understanding the text. I mean, we're trying to square a circle here because they still have to do the exam on the text. They're not doing an exam on performances. Why not just get a kid to watch 10 productions of Romeo and Juliet and write an essay on their experiences as performances? But anyway, so if they have to write about the text, at least get them to see it. But my argument is in London, Bristol, even Exeter, the chances of your set text being seen, it being possible to see your set text in performance during your 2-year study period is high. Cornwall, kids in Cornwall are literally disadvantaged. They can't kick Shakespeare off the syllabus. They have to study it. And if you're in Cornwall, how many productions of Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, The Tempest are going to go on? Yeah. And if you don't see it, you will always be limited by your understanding, and therefore you won't achieve so well. You won't be. So I would love to set up a repertory theatre company for Cornwall, based in Cornwall, that learns that performs the set text, go into schools and provide them with that experience.
Yeah, I was planning on bringing this up. Actually.
Oh right, have we talked about it before?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting old because I forget what I said.
No, because when we went to the poetry event in Falmouth, and we were sitting in the car. Back in November, I think it was.
Was I banging on about the same thing?
No, I'm definitely not banging on. But you asked an interesting question, like what's your dream? What's the passion? Which I love that question, and
we need to ask one another a bit more.
Yeah, I was just going to say no one had asked me that in years, so I was definitely.
I can die a happy man, Josh.
Shocked. I was definitely taken aback by it, and put me in thought. And when I asked you back, you spoke about this. 18-wheeler truck.
That's the other one. Yeah,
pull up the sides and you tour Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. To the across Cornwall and to festivals and stuff like that. Is that another one of the?
Well, along with the auditorium just out that window over there on a piece of flat unused land with an extraordinary view. I'm an ideas person. It's something I feel quite ashamed of because I just envy people who are able to just get shit done. Just do stuff and deliver their passions. I guess for Outspoken is the first time I feel like I've done that for a long time, and I spend my whole time thinking it's awful anyway, deeply self-critical. There's 101 projects that relate to the arts, particularly performing arts in Cornwall, that I have. So if anyone is out there who wants to make them happen. But then again, that's a really interesting, going back to our bartering, asking for help. I've discovered a few people just recently who have good project management experience. They have good delivery experience. They're focused, they're organised, they're not crippled by perfectionism. And that's where like the marrying up to achieve aims for no money at first and purely on the basis that connection is important and they have something to give. Asking for help is so hard. But actually, I have another thing I'd like to see, like as a forum where there's ideas people and there's delivery and realising ideas people, and we connect them up for mutual gain, either just for mutual connection, enjoyment, and non-profit, or for profit. And because I think recognising what our strengths are, and that's partly to do with us getting older. I'm older than you, but like realising your capacity, realising who you are, not giving up on changing, but looking at your track record and thinking, well, I'm going to change. I need to be honest about my capacity to change, and maybe that will develop. But I've gone off on one now. But
just firstly, Sprout Spoken is really good.
No, it's
so
not.
don't put that down. No, it's really good.
Oh, the negative self-talk needs to be.
But I think a lot of what you're talking about is this idea of like momentum. You know, you've got your whole life experience, kind of like a big heavy train pushing you in one direction, and it's quite hard to turn that around or turn it in a different direction because of the momentum that's pushing you that way. But it's definitely possible, but I'm the same. I've got a bunch of ideas, and you get one or two done in your life, and you've got to prioritise, I guess.
So we need to find people who are. Well, I'm not going to include you in this bracket. You're doing a wonderful podcast. You talked to me about this idea of running a podcast, and I was getting to know you, and I said, what project would you like to kind of line up? And you explained it to me. And I thought it was really interesting. We kind of thrashed out some ideas, and I didn't hear from you, but not for very long. It wasn't a long time that elapsed between that conversation and now, and you've made it happen. I'm surprised how quickly. Not because I have a particular appraisal of you, although I didn't know you that well and still getting to know you, but more that I'm surrounded by people who have ideas and don't deliver. I'm one of them. And Newquay and Cornwall, the flip side of being relaxed and chilled is sometimes a little lack of motivation and kind of a lot of that and not a lot of doing. And so but you're doing it. It's great. Like it's happening.
Yeah.
This may turn you off though. Like this one, maybe like no.
Yeah, this is my first and last. No, I think. I'm excited to do the podcast just purely so I can talk to some people in the community and get to know Newquay a bit better. So I wanted to make it happen as soon as possible, just so it helps me settle in to this area. Where I lived in London, I'd lived there my whole life, so I had quite a good friendship base and was quite connected with lots of people there. So it's probably the one thing I miss the most about being in a new area and a new part of the country is being so connected with the community, and I hope this podcast on a selfish route gives me that. We do those links into the different places because there's a lot to offer in Newquay. I mean, since I had this idea for the podcast, I've been getting ideas from people about who to talk to and what kind of businesses make a big impact, and there's way more than I was expecting. And
you've been in Newquay a year?
Not even that. Half a year.
So I've been 13, 14 years, and Newquay's changed massively in that time. But also I've got I've seen firsthand how other areas in Cornwall view Newquay, and it's just interesting the way that you say, I live in Newquay, and people have instant perceptions of the place, often based on the last time they were there 10 years ago. They happened to see a stag do behaving as a stag do would in any other city in the UK, and they've basically written Newquay off on that basis.
Yeah, it is a very different place to any other part of Cornwall I've been to.
It does stand alone, I think. Lots of other places stand alone, but yeah. One of the reasons why I think Newquay, it's a no-brainer to have faith in Newquay is, these beaches, where else in Cornwall, if you live, say, in the middle of town or just kind of round, if you live in the middle of town, you can access 7 distinct beaches, with their own names, their own feel, their own identity, their own cafes attached to them. You can access 7, 8 beaches within, 3 or 4 within 5-10 minutes walk. If you're prepared to walk to the Gannel and go to Crantop in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe pushing it, 7 or 8 beaches. And you've got everything else on your doorstep. You've got a cinema, you've got a swimming pool, you've got bowling alleys, you've got lots of exciting independent shops popping up, you've got a boating lake, you've got one of the best skate ramps in the country. But those beaches aren't going anywhere. And as Newquay changes, and develops, like nowhere else in Cornwall can offer that.
I think for me, from my experience just getting here, there are definitely other places in Cornwall, like Truro is really nice, bit more of a, not city, but a bit more of a
technically
town.
City.
Yeah, city.
It's less sprawling.
Yeah, and then like Falmouth, where we went for poetry, is really nice, and it's got the university, so it's quite
spunky,
trendy, I guess. Yeah. But then, so I didn't really notice much. Like, it's a beautiful place to live, Newquay, and loads of beaches, which is great. But that's not what I noticed when I moved here. What I noticed was it's full of people that have moved here at 14 years ago, 10 years ago, 1 year ago, or 6 months ago, like myself. And because it's got all of these people, I think they were probably more welcoming than I was expecting, because people have gone through the process that I'm going through now. So they kind of know what it's like to live in a new place, so that was what stood out to me, was just how friendly and welcoming people were, and
probably the most transient place in Cornwall. People coming and going, people coming and staying, but you can't pin down a Newquay local easily. People do live in Newquay, and it's got a very, very strong community that have been there, families going back. But some people have moved here and are coming and going. They're just open to talking to people, and particularly if you're a London exile. I mean, I love Cornwall now. I love Newquay. I love people who are born and bred Cornwall and Newquay, and I have good connections with them and close friends. But when I spot a London exile, I'm like, I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. I want to connect with you in a way that only Londoners can connect with one another, but also I want to welcome you because I know what it's been like, and I want you to be my friend. That's the only reason we're doing this.
fine with me, I've really enjoyed it so far. I haven't experienced the summer here though, which people have been warning me.
People love to have a good old complain, don't they? Financially, this town depends on people coming who don't live here, who come for a week to spend money in it. So just deal with it. As in, you haven't been, so I'm not telling you to, but you should just deal with it. As in, yes, parking is harder. Yes, there are loads of people. Yes, they're the type of people that maybe we don't find. It's not as a snobbishness. They're called MX for a reason. It's Newquay and Cornwall looking down on people who don't know the place and just come and spend their money and keep our economy going. It's like, just get. So and plus you're from London, so you know what busy is. Like you see more if you spend a day in central London, you'll see more people in that day than you will the whole 6 weeks of the summer here. So
yeah, it sounds like it's been built up more than.
It's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's just.
To be fair, a lot of people have also said, with it comes, festivals that you can get involved with, more pop-up bars and like lots of outdoor events.
And just more people. Like the winter can be miserable. You walk from one end of town to the other on a Sunday night at 7:00. It's a ghost town. That's not a happy place.
I like that.
Well, yeah, there's benefits to it, but
peace and quiet.
Well, yeah, but do you ever feel a bit like this is your first winter? You wait till you've done 13 winters of that, mate. Okay. I like the peace and quiet. Yeah, the beaches particularly when they're quiet, but that's interesting. Maybe we're different. You came down here by choice. I won't go hugely into my backstory, but I came down here. Ultimately, I chose to come down here, but it was rather sudden and rather totally unpredicted, and it was out of necessity. And I stayed here out of necessity, essentially for my children. So there's always been a bit of like, not.
Have you thought about moving?
No, I'm happy. It took me a long time, but I am deeply happy here. And I always wonder, people say, will you go back? And as things stand, my children will both be 18 by the time I'm 45. So I joke with people that I'll go back to London at 45 and have the youth that I never had, because I left London at 18.
Drive back in a sports car.
Or a camper van. I think, but to be honest, I work in a restaurant and there are certain phrases, paragraphs of patter that I have with, hundreds, thousands of guests, and I think that's become something that I just say, but actually I don't believe it. I don't think I will. I don't think I want to. I love going to London for holiday.
Yeah,
coming back here for home.
Yeah, at 45, all your friends are here. Be quite a big. Yeah, maybe go back for a year and see how it goes.
I think the part, I'm going to just own up to one thing, being the reluctant person, taking your time to get into Newquay, and it was at a time when a lot of my life was quite not really going the way I wanted it, and had lots of dreams and visions, but ultimately was unable to kind of follow them through no one else's fault other than my own incapacity and ability to do it. And then missed my friends massively. I became a parent relatively young compared to my contemporaries, so there was that. I loved my children obviously, but it was like, okay, I've made the decision for practical reasons. And I think I've come to see that I like Newquay and Cornwall because you can be an underachiever without like it being noticed. And again, that says more about me, I think, because I came from a very high achieving environment in terms of contemporaries at school and London, kind of particularly like Southwest London. People were very driven, everything was, kind of top flight really. And by moving down to Newquay, not feeling like I was the person that I wanted to be, not really liking Newquay, not really connecting with people, and then actually not delivering what I wanted to do and not following my dreams, it's like, oh, it's okay to be an underachiever because you tell people what grades you got at A-level or the life that you lead, and then, that's a really good life, it's really good grades, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. So that's my thing from coming from South West London bubble, really.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a particularly like healthy mindset to have.
No, well, I don't. We're not my therapist, but we can go down that line. But no, you're right. No, it's something I'm working through. I thought
you don't. It's one of those things where I always feel like you're that until you do something like Sprout Spoke.
Yeah.
And then you're not. Whether it works or it doesn't work, and it is working.
Yeah, which brings it.
That's
why it's such a personal thing for me, because it signifies me getting over myself and doing it. I don't know whether there's that bit where, because there's no other spoken word event in Newquay, never has been, there isn't a regular monthly one in the way that Sprout Spoken is in Cornwall, that it was like, well, I've got nothing to lose. Like, you know, and I think there's that, but that's the perfectionist, and, you know, comparison is crippling. It's like, you know, if you allow comparison to take over your soul and look around and go, I want to be as good as that, I'm never going to be as good as that, I won't do it because I'm not, like, it can be crippling. And I think probably that's partly what I mean by, there are niches, but let's look at on the positive side. You come down to Cornwall, you know, whatever you want to be in London, for example, 1,000,001 other people are doing it anyway, so the competition is stiff. You know, that if you are, anyone is prone to comparison, comparison inhibition. But in Cornwall, like, you can be like, well, I'm going to do this because no one else is doing this, and yeah, that is wonderfully liberating, and it counts. You know what I mean? Like, Sprouts Spoken counts in Newquay because it's the only one. It's doing something that no one else is doing, and it's giving something of added value to people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, you 50 plus people in the last one.
Yeah, and I've learned not to just value our numbers, though also keep an eye on numbers as well.
Yeah.
Because it is an indicator of interest. And like to say, kind of turning back to what I was saying at the beginning, the value is like, I let go of one back in October and pretty much had nothing to do with it in terms of involvement. I did a bit of promotion, but didn't deliver it, wasn't up front, didn't organise it, turned up, was a punter at the back. And at one point I did look around, the person I was with nudged me and was like, look, like, you've done this. And I wasn't looking at the quality of the performance up at the front, although that night was the night you shared, and it was very good. And actually it was a really good selection of people sharing. But it was more looking around and like the vibe and people connecting and people telling me, oh, I've gone away and written for the first time, or I've gone and started a spoken word event like in Helston, or I met this person through and we now hang out. It's like, that's the stuff, that's the gold. That gold is more important to me than the execution of an amazing poem. A bit like what you said, why you enjoy the open mics more than the showcase.
Yeah, and I think if you know, you stopped now, it would be a success because it you know, helped me settle into Newquay life. I met friends through going to one of the events, and like you said, a lot of people started writing or developed their confidence by speaking in front of other people for the first time. Yes, and it's easy to like forget there's a lot of value in those little things.
Yeah, it's where you place the value, and that, I think this chat has become a little bit about the process of creation and how that, as a creator, what's going on in there, and it won't be relatable for everyone. There's some people may, but for me, it's been that journey of recognizing what the gold is. It's the word I keep coming back to. It's the gold. It's the precious stuff. It's the stuff of value, and it just doesn't mean that you shouldn't aim for artistic merit, but just kind of recalibrating yourself to focus and see the gold that's actually not. You can't see it, but you can see it, but it's immaterial. Yeah. It's not material.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, I've made this money, or I've got the best poet to come and share, or like the poster is really good, or you know.
And I think it's easy to lose that and get stuck on how much money did it make, or how many people.
Which, for the record, is none.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But so if you judged it on a like purely capitalist point, you
absolutely.
know, I mean, but it hasn't made any profit. But you've paid, I don't know, £300 a night, making up a figure, to performers, and given them, you know, money that they probably value very highly because it's hard to get paid.
Yeah. We do pay well.
Doing spoken word.
Yeah. And I mean, there's putting Newquay on the map and all those things. Yeah, there's so many. I need to write them down, actually.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to apply for funding, that kind of stuff is what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. It's really good.
Yeah.
Like, well, they're like, well, why do you want funding? Like, we're not just going to pay for good art. Like, but what are you doing? What measure? You know,
do you think it's something that could be funded privately?
No. I mean, the arts. Yeah, I mean,
because to run the event a little bit better, you wouldn't need a huge amount of money once a month, like £100 a month extra.
Where was you?
Might be something, and for some of these businesses up in London or
Oh well, yeah. I mean,
£100, £200 a month is a penny.
yeah. I mean, I think you have to, and I've spoken to a lot of people who started businesses, organisations. I think, and my background, I have a fairly lengthy period of time in my life where I was in marketing, and I think it's so important to square up fully to your market. It's not rocket science, but I think people get carried away with ideas or interests, or they're unrealistic. And interestingly, my experience with marketing has taught me to be quite realistic at that and look at things kind of without compromise. So your market, face up to the fact that, for instance, in Newquay, people do not have very much disposable income. Face up to it, focus on it. People do not have a wide exposure to the arts. People, whether you like it or not, and all credit to you wanting to change perception, but people currently have a perception of poetry, face up to it, and then you're not going to be in for surprises, and you're going to succeed with what you're doing. By all means, try and change the market, but face up to what it is first, and be realistic about how you can change, and recognise that change often takes time. So yeah, I think could it be a could I make money out of it as a financial model? Spoken word, probably not. Would I? Who is making money out of the arts in Cornwall? Who's making an actual living when they, push comes to shove? Be interested to know. And I've got a few people in mind who I know are, but I mean, exception to the rule. Well, but we're talking about without funding, because it's not private unless it's without funding. Like if it's purely private, no fund. I mean, yeah, I'd be really, really interested.
Is the Minute Theatre
my
funding?
Okay, so I don't know. I know very, very little about funding. In fact, that is one of the things that the next step, and it's the thing I feel terrified and paralysed about doing because I just can't. I need someone to do it, but. And obviously arts funding has gone down across the board as a result of the changes to the economy and political situation over the last decade. The MINAC, I don't know, I would have thought that it's got to have some kind of funding externally to supplement its income.
I'd be interested to know.
I mean, it's one of the most, it's in terms of its take-up, it's one of the more successful.
Yeah, probably the most successful.
Yeah.
It's the one that I would know about as a theatre venue.
Yeah. And obviously it's an unusual model. It's not a...
Is it set in the...
Yes.
In the cliffs?
Yes, so for those who don't know, yes, set right into the cliffs. So it's a very unusual model set up by an individual. I don't know who owns the land. I don't know whether the maintenance is a lot less than the usual theatre because it's outside and essentially just, they have a strong volunteer force there in terms of, I think all the stewards and ushers are volunteers. It's well loved.
Yeah. I do find it such a shame. It's one of those things that bugs me a bit. Like the amount of money that's out there that's being spent on, shit food and sugary drinks or whatever, to have such important things like theatre and art and teachers and nurses and there's so many things that are so vital to the community that are paid dog crap, and when there is just so much money out there.
Yeah, well, I mean that kind of conversation ultimately leads to an existential conversation about, why are we here? What's the point of anything? And I'll park that there, but to bring it to the arts, John Carey wrote a fantastic book, What Good Are the Arts? For about 12, 13 years ago. I mean, lots of people have written on the same, but it's a really good kind of it's not. It's just a pop take on, for every man really. I include myself in that, to really think through those ideas. But why should the state fund any arts? It starts from that point. Like, well, why does the state pay, like for instance, the RSC and the National Theatre are both. Someone's going to correct me here, but to my knowledge, have always been really, essentially they are financed by the state. Why? Like how do we measure social impact on arts, the impact of arts on on society, and on what basis are we making that value judgment? I think it's a really interesting conversation to have, not necessarily here, but it does. Once you drill down, it starts thinking, well, actually. Like why? Why put money into a theatre when we could put it into a hospital?
Yeah,
it's a really interesting conversation.
Yeah,
because whilst there is lots of money, if it's not going to places that we would naturally think really it should do, ultimately, if we're all a bunch of molecules that are moving from a big bang to a big implosion, I like to have those conversations because it forces people to really drill down to their reason and logic of how they're building their
but I think
their worldview.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love those conversations as well. We will, and we have had a few.
Not here, no.
But whatever big philosophy you have on life, I think there are a few things that are just fact. In a sense that, for whatever reason, certain things make groups of people happy, and whether I know there's layers to that, but I'd like not thinking too deeply into that and getting lost in nihilism and all this other stuff, and just having the idea of we know that theatre and the arts and comedy make people happier. There's value in, I like being happy, you like being happy, Corey does, everyone does. So why not encourage that and just let's not think too deeply into it.
Yeah, well that's where we're different. But that's probably, I like starting from the point of view as everything's off the table. Quantifying happiness, and if we live in a Western society where we pride kind of relativism above everything else, which ultimately we do. Well, I would argue that it's one of our highest maxims. We shaft ourselves when it comes to kind of thrashing out this kind of stuff, because there is no absolute anchor to kind of absolute hat stand to hang our hats, that's anchored, that we all can all accept. Because ultimately, do we then choose the art form that makes the most number of people happy? If that art form makes that person unhappy, do we, for instance, look at censorship, for example, a really interesting one. If I'm offended by something and that makes me unhappy, is the answer, well, you just get over it because it's making these people happy? I mean, that's where, I just think that's where, with a little bit of prodding, these things are really, really tricky to come to an agreement on. And goodness knows, the government gets a whole lot of stick for everything. And I've just got nothing but respect for the government ultimately, and I mean the government in its entirety. I shouldn't mention Parliament, who are thrashing these things out, because how on earth do you decide what's best for, what are we now, 70 million people?
Yeah, hard work.
I do wish people would, we're all on a journey of humility, but I get very frustrated by people who see things in black and white, and again, I'm not saying that this has come out of nowhere, but you look at people's criticism of, particularly of government, and whatever side of Brexit you stand on, it's a freaking complicated business, and you go and do it. Okay, you say we will remain, and you want a Brexit, or you say the Brexit's not hard enough or whatever, but you go and do it. Literally go and sit at number 10 on a salary that's actually a lot less than people get in the public sector for managing the same levels of responsibility with all the pressure, and the slap, she's not doing it for the money. That's why, not why she's doing it. Well, I wouldn't want to be her.
No. Me neither, yeah. Politics is a hard game to get into.
We need a bit more humility and a bit more understanding and learn. We have learned, we see things, and this is partly due to my views, to soundbite culture, understanding things, from having busy lives, only touching the surface of issues, getting our knowledge, our news from social media. We don't, and this is partly why I know you wanted to do this, because you really craved some depth, and a conversation like this. Anyone who cares to listen to me or watch me, with your questions prompting, at least gets some depth and richness. They may disagree with everything that I have said, but it will have re-bolstered their worldview, or they may have learned something rather than just
better to be exposed to information than ignore it, huh?
But that's time, because we're so, our lives are so fast paced. We just do everything rather superficially, rather than a few things well. What I mean?
I like this. Why personally I like the podcast format.
Yeah.
I listen to a bunch myself and stick them on a pair of headphones and walk around the flat, cleaning and sorting things out, or I'll put it on when I'm driving, on my way to work, like commuting or whatever it is. And it's becoming super popular. People, rather than a 30-second soundbite on Twitter, it's like an hour, 2 hour conversation with people that you want to hear from.
Who you may not agree with as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, obviously, with social media and the vacuum and the bubble. I mean, the phrase is both a couple of years old now, but people are reacting to that and going, actually, I want to listen to people in depth and be challenged and not necessarily always agree.
Well, with this, I think I'll get that a lot because it's not like this is a left-wing podcast on people's political views, so everyone I interview is the same.
No agenda.
There's no, it's, you run this, you run Sprout Spoken, someone else runs that. There's no commonality on what they're going to be thinking about at the time or talking about. And so I hope that it will be very different conversations from every podcast.
And then at the end you get them all in one room and you do a group
debate.
Get them.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
I'm well aware that you got to shoot off to Bodmin, so
Who is it?
do you want to?
I can give you a bit longer if you want it.
Well, I mean, it'd be good to point everyone in the direction of Sprout Spoken and where they can find information on the next event.
So you mean a plug? Is that what
plug
you're
it?
saying?
Yeah, plug the head out of it.
So, let's just encourage you all to. I'm going to try and address the camera. I think I might address the camera. I can't address the microphone. There's a camera here as well. Can I just say that Corey's doing a really good job? He's. This is an example of. I don't believe you're paying Corey, have you?
Coffee.
Yeah, it's an example of Newquay working in kind of community and partnership, and it working for. I find it really hard to ask Corey to come and just spend it's his time. He might rather sit in the bath, but he's doing it because he enjoys it. He likes connection. Obviously, he wants to further his craft, and ultimately, we all want to make money out of our craft, but recognising that in the early days. Thank you, Corey. Corey's also been slipping water to us surreptitiously. So, in terms of continuity, this glass of water just goes on forever. So, if you haven't been to a Sprout Spoken event, do not discount it. Do not tell yourself that it's not for you. Do not think you know what it is about. I really believe in trying, I think everyone likes the philosophy of, try everything once. So come along. We've used the P word, the P bomb. I dropped the P bomb a few times today, poetry. And hopefully if you've got this far in the podcast and you've listened to kind of how I feel about poetry and it being a live art form that engages and makes connection. Hold on to that. So the open mic, which is the next event, that's the 20th of February. I'm hosting it, co-hosting actually, and we have no idea what's going to happen. No one lets us know in advance who they're going to come along, and so no one may come, or 55 people may come, in which case we'll have to get more chairs and probably open some windows. And we have no idea who's going to get up and share, and they'll share. It's a genuine open mic. That's the 20th of February. And then the next, we haven't quite settled on a kind of descriptor, showcase, a performance. We call it Supersonic, and it is, the way I describe it is it's structured a little bit like a stand-up comedy gig in terms of a headliner and then support acts. So we have 6 artists on the 23rd of March. The headliner is Crafty, who is a battle MC from London. He is coming down from Bristol. He runs, he's an artist in his own right, but also runs Bristol's premier spoken word night. He's headlining, and then we've got a bunch of support artists as well. One of the things I really want to have as part of these showcase evenings is to support local artists and give them their first gig. So see them operating in Cornwall on an open mic level, and then like have a little kind of spotlight, 7-10 minutes slot, get paid a little bit as well. So we've got 3 artists from Cornwall, 2 from Bristol, and 3 from Bristol. So, and that's 23rd of March, and then ongoing.
Yeah, and I would say that the venue, Sprout, I'm really excited.
Oh yeah, we have to talk about this, don't we?
I'm really excited to see it heading outdoors.
Yeah, it's
to this like beautiful courtyard with a little stage on. It's going to be lit really nicely, and come the summer months. And when does it first go out?
23rd. We're going to go for 23rd of March.
Okay.
So let's hope. March is obviously hit and miss weather, so bring a scarf and some gloves anyway. But hopefully it'll be fine. But
that's something quite nice about
totally
being out your coat, like maybe.
Well, it was too hot last time because you said there's too many people in it, so it was boiling hot. So we'll get there. But it's come at the right time because we have outgrown the indoor venue. The outside venue will hold probably 15-20% more. Like you say, the vibe will be great. It's got a natural stage. How it's operating in Sprout at the moment is pop up and ramshackle but fun. Don't know about health and safety, but you can edit that bit out. So I want to call it Sprout Side, but Baston Clare aren't necessary. I think Sprout Side works. Yeah. Can you try and convince them? Because it's so good. Like, it's outside and the courtyard is right at the side of Sprout. Like they're like, no, it's Sprout Side, obviously.
Also just to mention, because there's normally like a really good local musician that does like a 15-20 minute set.
Yeah, so
I think that's such a nice touch because
we've got it's a new thing, and it's because music's a really big thing in Newquay. The music scene's strong. There's lots of people play. There are lots of bands. It's an art form that is everyone is kind of comfortable with, as opposed to say spoken word, for example. But I really want to encourage people to think about spoken word and poetry and the connection with music. People are happy writing lyrics. They've got their favourite song lyrics. Spoken word poetry is just music minus melody. So to see that cross section really, and to get local artists, bands, groups, individuals who write. I don't want it to be taken over by the melody side, the music side, but for it to be original lyric driven. We've got a band, not a band, they're a newly formed group called Blunder, who are doing a little set at the next one, and it will be the first time we've had. It's a female vocalist, a male rapper, so that I'm really excited about that because it will tie in very tightly with the rap overlap with spoken word. So that's going to be great. I discovered them, as it were, not in a big way. I just so that's really exciting, and it'll be their first gig together. Him in particular, he's already released stuff, but it's their first gig together. So that's really exciting. That adds to it, and there's of course you've got all the food that Baston Clare put together, and it's licensed, and we'll probably have like the fire pit out there as well. So Yeah, and 6 artists this time. I don't know whether I've booked too many. 5 was. We'll just have
Five
short.
worked well, I thought.
5 as well. We'll just have tighter slots.
Yeah.
Tighter intro outros. It'll be great. It'll be a good night.
And are you on Facebook?
Yeah, so Sprout Spoken. I'm going to add one other thing actually. Do you know Head Love and Passman? So Head Love and Passman are a Cornish rap Casio keyboard infused kind of couple of guys. Some of their rap stuff. A lot of their stuff's quite tongue in cheek. Their live performances are kind of outrageous. They're performing at Dead Famous. And an example of how Newquay works really well, I contacted the guy and said, "You're running the same night. Like we've got Sprout Spoken. Like your overlap. It's a battle MC. Let's not. Can we? And he was like, yeah, we'll organise for them to come on like 15-20 minutes after your event ends, and then of course we can get up and say, right, well, it's happening. It's 5 minutes down the road, an after party or whatever. We'll go down and see these guys." So it's an example of like.
Are they going to do a 10-minute bit?
Yeah, it's tempting, isn't it?
They should, just to drum up some interest. If you like
I might
a taster.
It's an idea. Yeah, we could. It's probably because it's the head. Yeah, it's difficult because I should have got them to do the interval slot, really, shouldn't I? That would have been.
Wow, even if they just come and do 10 minutes and say.
After the headliner.
No, in somewhere around the middle, and just say, look, there's going to be potentially 50 people who have nothing to do at the end of the gig.
They might come and do like one song or something.
Yeah, that's all they need.
They've got a favourite song. It's called "Doing It Directly," and it's got a really catchy chorus, but it's basically takes the mick out of kind of the Cornish lackadaisical kind of approach to life. So maybe, I'm tempted. Good idea.
Definitely,
good idea. I just don't want to upset Dead Famous, but yeah, example of
no, it's
people.
It's better for Dead Famous.
Hopefully, they can say they can do.
It's not like I've seen you. No.
The funny enough, they were on my radar to contact. I've known about them for quite a few years, and I did have them in the pipeline, thinking it'd be good to get them. But they play quite a lot in Newquay anyway, which is really it's an example of how people they sell out. Their gigs sell out. I mean, they are great fun, and it is a proper full-on experience. Like it's a party experience. He ends up, spoiler alert, one of them at least normally ends up running around just in his pants, like massive white Y fronts. At one point he had a radio mic and he was running into the ground and ran outside, and it was at Whiskers where the glass, you could see so you could just see him and then he'd come back in. So yeah, I mean it's a bit different to standard spoken word night, but it's just interesting to see how kind of. So yeah, we're on Facebook, Sprout Spoken. Not really on Twitter or Instagram yet.
No.
You can look me up.
Facebook's enough.
Go into Sprout, that's the other thing. Go into Sprout Health Foods, and because those guys, we haven't really spent a huge amount of time talking about them. Bastille are just amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of the kind of people we're talking about who care about community and give and just make shit happen.
Yeah, they're going to be one of my next.
Yeah.
Podcast.
You're going to have
They've already promised me.
You're not going to see this. No one's going to see this one, are they? Because this is the trial one.
No, I think we might put it on there. We've got to ask Corey if it was any good.
Yeah, no, they're going to have great fun with Bastille. They're such special people, and they make Sprout Spoken happen. Sprout Spoken, with the greatest respect to any other venue in Newquay, Sprout make it happen, and it would not work anywhere else. So probably going to see them. That's my box office, as it were. They're the frontline kind of 8, 9 till 5 voice of Sprout Spoken. So.
Cool. Well, thanks, man.